Any questions? Just a wrap up. Sanctioning Alaskans in Alaska, strengthening Iran, China in a move tomorrow that, as you heard from my colleagues, makes zero economic sense, zero national security sense, zero environmental sense, and zero job sense. So, yes, sir.
Hey, Gary Johnson, PNE News, Politico. Wanted to ask, what can or are Republicans in the Senate planning to do to counter this decision?
Well, look, we're planning on doing a lot. These would be subject to a CRA, very likely. This CRA is, I think, would almost certainly pass in the Senate and the House. President would probably veto it. If there are ways in which we can work that to delay that a little bit and get the next administration, you might remember when we were able to do that with 17 Congressional Review Acts. But there's a whole host of other ways in which we can move forward. Look, the Department of Interior, there's going to be no more confirmations with regard to people coming forward in that. You have the chairman of the committee, who probably would have been fine being in this press conference, Joe Manchin, who's been a very strong supporter of Alaska energy. But, you know, part of what we're trying to do here is get the word out. When the average American sees these policies, understands these policies, the most important thing we can do is retake the Senate, retake the White House. That's going to be the ultimate revenge here. And I think when you see the president making these decisions that, again, sell out almost every interest of the United States, environmental, national security, jobs, our allies, for the far left radicals, simply because he wants to get reelected, I think it's going to have the opposite effect. One final thing here with regard to both of these decisions, they are clearly illegal. The National Petroleum Reserve of Alaska was set aside in the 20s by the Warren Harding administration for oil and gas development. It was called the Navy Petroleum Reserve of Alaska. It was changed in the 1970s. The reserve is meant for oil and gas development. The Ambler Road, there's a 1980 law called ANILCA that says the Secretary of Interior shall issue this right-of-way that they're going to reverse tomorrow. So it's lawless, and I think that the impacts on this administration's ability to win elections is going to undermine them. That's the ultimate way in which we reverse these. Yeah.
What's the latest correspondence that you've had with the Biden administration on these decisions?
Well, you may have seen these decisions were leaked to the press earlier in the week, and they finally decided to call Senator Murkowski and myself yesterday to give us a heads up after they had leaked both the Ambler Road decision and the NPRA decision to the press earlier in the week. That's another thing we deal with these guys. Look, guys, I don't have the handout. This is the 62nd. These two will be the 62nd, 62 executive orders and executive actions that the Biden administration has taken exclusively focused on Alaska. Exclusively focused on Alaska. There has been no state, probably in the history of the country, that has been hammered by a federal government more than we have by this administration. I handed the President of the United States this chart we call the Last Frontier Lockup in an Oval Office meeting last year, and I said, Mr. President, with all due respect, I know I'm in the Oval Office, this is wrong. This is wrong. No state should be punished the way in which you do that to my state. If you had a Republican administration that came into office and issued 62 executive orders against puny little Delaware, and Joe Biden was still a senator, he'd be doing what we're doing right now, on the Senate floor, holding press conferences, raising hell. But look, the far left radicals love to shut down Alaska, and Joe Biden is making us his sacrificial lamb so he can get reelected. So it's just wrong. And a lot of it's lawless, like I said. So we'll sue, and we'll probably win, but, you know, that'll take 3 to 5 years. Well, the state of Alaska is certainly going to sue on these things. And they know that, right? They know that. Again, I could give you the law. The ANILCA law says The Secretary shall issue a right-of-way, this is the Ambler Road, and it's not subject to judicial review, meaning like, this was a great Ted Stevens provision, very airtight, that they have to do this. And they're looking at us and saying, we're not going to do it because our radical far-left environmental allies don't want us to. But think about this, again, just stepping back. Think about what this does with our ability to produce critical minerals and rare earth elements for America when we need them so bad. They are sacrificing all of that at the altar of appeasing far-left radicals.
Last question I have for you is, what would you say to your constituents back home over this decision?
We're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep fighting. And, of course, Alaskans know how badly this harms our state, particularly, as I mentioned, the Alaska Native people. This administration talks about, hey, we want to focus on indigenous communities, people of color. There's a giant asterisk by that. And by the way, I said this to the White House yesterday when they called me, except if you're an Alaska Native. Then it's like, we're coming after you to screw you. They do it on every decision. This NPRA decision, the entire leadership of the North Slope Borough, the tribes in the North Slope, the Alaska Native corporations are opposed to this NPRA rule. They have come down here 8 different times. 8 different times. They've traveled 4,000 miles to meet with Secretary Holland. You know how many times she's met with them? 0. 0. I hope you guys write that. 0. And these guys talk about they care about indigenous people, not the indigenous people from my state, I can tell you that. Yep.
One last thing. You guys have some quote-unquote must-pass bills coming up, bills that will likely pass, big bills. Any chance you would consider or think you could put a rider on one of those?
Well, we're looking at all options, right? Let me give you another example of what's going on right now. The Francis Scott Bridge, right, that everybody now wants to rebuild real quick, all federal dollars, and we can't build a road to the Ambler Mining District. I mean, these are the kind of things that there's such a double standard here. So we're looking at all different options, but it's an important question, and it's different elements of strategy. But again, elections have consequences, and we're hopeful that the best way to reverse these is to send Joe Biden packing and retake the Senate majority in the U.S. Senate. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate your interest. And if you want to come to the